I'm curious, what's the percentage of NKT you use throughout your sessions? If you have, 10 sessions throughout a week, how many of those are going to be NKT related, or maybe you're going to be doing other things? Is NKT just within your practice in general, something that you use like every single time, every single client? Or is it like you only really use it with people when they have specific issues, or you feel like there's muscle imbalances you need to address, or how often are you using it with people?
So I've got a way to test it to use NKT with training sessions so that they don't have to be on the table. They can use NKT on the gym floor. And so, and I don't do a lot of training clients right now because I mean I moved from Asia to the States, and then after that I started traveling a lot and whatnot. So it's not a good way to build up like training clientele.
Yeah.
I still have a few, but it's not going to be a ton. Plus, I don't think it's fair for a lot of people who haven't gone all the time.
Yeah.
So for those clients, I try to keep them off the table, and try to keep stuff to training because that's what they came in for.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do need to use NKT on them, it's typically like a hidden NKT, like while they're training. And like, let me try some real quick, and I'll just like TL something and touch something and have them do some. So I sneak it in there, and so that's always fun. So I pretty much use NKT almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm watching somebody do some movements and some training and stuff, I'm like, oh, that looks a little bit off, or that there's something that I can see that's not quite activating quite right, and just by like tapping it, it's not working very well. Like they just can't figure it out, and then I'll just kind of like, oh, can you feel that muscle right there move? And they're like, no, I can't really feel that much. I'm having a hard time activating it. Like they might not have any pain. It's just just having a hard time activating it. So then I'll just kind of like look around real quick and just kind of assess while they're doing their movements. And then I'm like, right there. So then I'll just kind of like do a quick TL and see how that is, and quick directional test. I'm like, all right, cool, it's gonna be that.
Yeah.
So then I'll have them do like a stretch or something first, and then okay, stretch this first, and then try that out.
Okay.
Like, oh, okay, that's cool, sweet. All right, carry on. So I'll use NKT in different ways with different clients. So if they're in for treatment, a lot of times they start, they're on the table a little bit more. And then if they're for training, I try to keep them off the table. But yeah, I tend to use it all the time.
Yeah, with almost all clients. And then, we kind of talked about this earlier, but when you are doing your NKT with people, less is more. So how much time might you actually spend doing NKT in like an hour-long session? Do you try to like keep it to just a few minutes, or what's kind of your time frame that you might estimate of how often you spend on average with people doing NKT?
So I kind of do a reverse thing. I'll save this to last like around 20 minutes or so, give or take 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the person and how much coaching that they'll need for movement. So I save a large chunk of time just to teach them their self-care program, the stuff that I want them to do. Okay. So that takes time. That takes time. That part's important because if they don't do that properly, I mean, that's the treatment right there, right? Like that's the reinforcement. That's the reprogramming, the rehabilitation. Is that a word?
It is now.
Right there. Yes. But yeah, I'll spend a decent amount of time on that to make sure that they understand it, that they can do it properly, and record it if they want to. And I'll spend whatever time before, like up until that point, with everything else. So assessments and talking about their dogs and talking about like how they've been doing since the last appointment, and just kind of catching up and whatever. And then so they might spend like 15 minutes talking about stuff. Right? Like, oh, well, I found that this is what I found lately. I found that like going up the stairs, just when my big toe hits the floor, that's when it hurts. But then when I go down, that's fine.
Okay, yeah.
So they'll start to because they start to like pay attention more to their life. So they'll give you a little bit more information. And then, so I might end up only doing like 5 to 10 minutes of NKT, or maybe even like 20 or 30 minutes of NKT, depending on the situation. But I just kind of do it backwards, where I leave the last like 15, 20 minutes for movement stuff.
Okay. Okay, I want to shift gears here a little bit and ask you just kind of about your progression of learning with NKT. Um, I know that you learned it pretty quickly. You caught on pretty fast, and I just want to ask, what was the timeline of it? How long ago was that? Like, how long ago was it when you just didn't even know what NKT was, and now becoming like an NKT instructor? And what was that whole process like? Was it like, wow, this was really challenging, or oh, I kind of had this background and it made it a little bit easier to understand? What was that? What was that learning process initially like for you, Jackie?
Yeah. So I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but when I first started NKT, I was completely clueless. I had no idea like what the hell was going on, and I almost quit. Um, uh, so this, yeah, I almost quit because when I took it, I think it was like in 2013 or something like March of 2013.
Okay.
Um, and I took it in Australia because that was the closest one.
Yeah. Well, I might have almost
'Cause-
quit if I took it in Australia too.
well, Australia was great.
Yeah, I've
Class
never
was
been there. I
great.
can't judge them.
Oh, I love it. It was
Yeah, I'm
fantastic
sure.
out there.
Yeah.
Um, no, but I took it in Australia because that was the closest one in vicinity, and
Mm-hmm.
also at that time, like it was like the first time I could actually leave Taiwan because I was getting citizenship and whatnot. So anyway,
Okay.
but I took it in Australia in March of I think it was 2013, and I came out of it like, oh my gosh, this is the nut, like this is crazy. I didn't really know what happened, um, and I thought it was a muscle testing class. And that's pretty much like all I got out of it was like, oh, it's muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
And back then we didn't have directional testing in level one at least. We didn't have directional testing in level one, and we didn't really practice the protocol too much in level one. We just did all this muscle testing. Like we introduced the protocol in the beginning, and the rest of it was all muscle testing.
Okay.
And then we went home.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, find stuff that's weak in the clear and find stuff that's strong in the clear. And it just made this whole list of stuff that's weak in the clear and stuff that's strong in the clear. And then I'm like, okay, now what? Something about a TL. And so it was kind of like in the dark, and I was completely lost.
Yeah.
And I went back to Taiwan, and I found this one other guy in Taiwan that had taken it 6 months before that, before I had in Toronto.
Okay.
And we were the only two people in the entire country that like took this class, and
Wow.
we're both clueless. Yeah, we're both clueless. We're like blind leading the blind, and we're trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. And then we're like, okay, they said something about like a Facebook page. So we went on the scholars page. We started asking questions. But then, like back then, like I mean, NKT has evolved so much, and the community has evolved so much. That's way more helpful now than it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
And like back then, of course, it was all good intentions to try to get people to try to encourage people to take higher levels, but it just wasn't helping the level that I was at that time. So a lot of the questions that I would ask, I would be people would reply with level 2 smiley face, level 3 smiley face.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's great, but what do I do with it now?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh shit, what do I do? And so I was about to give up. Like this is just really frustrating, and like I don't know what to do, and like nobody's helping me. So I kind of ditched the scholars page at that time because I wasn't getting any help from it. And so just trying to figure things out. And then from the luck of being in Taiwan when David brought NKT over to Taiwan for the first time at the end of 2013,
Okay.
He had sent me an email asking me if I wanted to be an assistant. And I had already, I don't even know how I passed, but I had already passed my level 1 cert.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, don't ask me how. I really don't know how I passed. But and since then, again, like NKT has raised their standards, and so like things have improved and come so far since then. I mean, even back then, we didn't have the anatomy prereq, like little pre-quiz.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Before. Yeah, we didn't have that. So I went in there not knowing what a psoas was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was that person.
Okay.
Yeah, I was that person. So if anybody like goes to level 1 thinking that they're completely clueless, yeah, you still have hope. You
Okay.
still have hope. Just keep plugging away. You have hope. But yeah, so I got to be an assistant with basically like the rock star crew of NKT. And it was because basically I think what David did was he just basically handpicked like some of the top people of NKT, and was like, hey, you guys want to go to Taiwan? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so I got to hang out with those people. And what had happened was I do really well under pressure. And so when David was teaching, I would pay attention because otherwise I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I would pay attention. And if something didn't make sense to me, or if I had a question, I would just like turn around and ask one of the 9 assistants that were rock stars right there and say, hey, what does that mean? And they would give me like a 5-second explanation, and it just catch on right there. And then I would have to turn around and explain it in Chinese to 50 doctors.
Oh man.
So so I learned very well under pressure. I learned very well with things that are a little bit more concise, or just like concepts. As long as I grasp this concept, I'm good. And then I also learned by teaching and repetition. So that whole process right there was like hearing it one more time, having somebody else explain to me in another way, and then having me explain to other people. That really drilled it into me right there. So I like to say that that's kind of when I learned NKT.
Okay.
And so, and because I have a background in teaching and instructing and stuff, because I've been teaching something ever since I've been like a kid. So I've got a lot of experience in teaching stuff to people.
Yeah.
So it was really easy for me to just like take whatever information that I just got and then just like explain it to the students back then. But because of that, David, David didn't understand Chinese, so I mean, I could have been teaching them algebra for all he knew. But
yeah.
But he saw that, he saw that I could teach and like I knew the language, so he had me in charge of the study groups, and as soon as he said that I was in charge of the study groups, I'm like, shit. I'm like, you want me to teach stuff to doctors?
Oh man.
So yeah, so that lit a fire under my butt, and I'm like, okay, I need to step up my game like massively. And of course, I didn't have to, right? I mean, I could have just like coasted along and been just fine. But like, no, that's not how I do things. That's not how Asians do things. I'm like, all right, I got to step up my game like big time, like quick.
Yeah.
So what I did was I made friends with like all those really awesome assistants that were there. And we all became really good friends, and I decided to shadow them that year. Not in 2013, but like in 2014, right? So that's that was like November when he came to Taiwan. I'm like, yeah, shadow everybody in a month. No.
Yeah.
So I made it a point in 2014 to shadow everybody that I had met there, and take my level 2 and level 3.
Okay.
So I took level 2. I think like March or February of that year of 2014, and then I took level 3 in May of 2014.
Okay, so you did it from March 2013 was level 1 all the way to May 2014. So a little bit over a year through the whole 3 courses. Yeah,
and the last 2 were because I'm like, oh, I gotta be ahead of the game. I gotta learn all this stuff before everybody else, because I have to, because in my mind, in order for me to teach something, I have to be proficient at it. So I had to be at least the next level up. And so in order to be the next level up, I had to have like a good understanding of the one before. So I flew to Toronto to take level 2 from Taiwan. And then I flew to San Francisco in May to take level 3.
Okay.
And so, so I have a very low tolerance for anybody who says that geographical distance and money is an issue for, or as an excuse for taking the next course up, or just any other course, because if you have the value for it, you will do it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, as a personal trainer in Taiwan, my income was way, way, way less than anybody in any Western country. I guarantee you. And to pay for a plane ticket internationally plus the
Yeah.
courses, yeah. So I have a very low tolerance for people who use those two things as an excuse.
Wait, you mean me driving from Santa Barbara down to LA is not a fair excuse? Because
Nope.
okay, never mind. All right,
Nope.
forget
Nope.
it.
Yeah, that's close. You can drive. You can definitely go.
It's super close.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, if you want the information, if you have value for it, because you know it's going to make you money,
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason that distance or money is an issue. I think because if you have the value for it, then you're going to make it happen. Anyway, back to topic. So level 3 in May of 2014, I believe it was, and 2014 I ended up shadowing everybody. I traveled to Bellingham, Washington. I traveled to something on the East Coast. Who did I shadow on the East Coast? I also shadowed in Denver. I shadowed in Dubai.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to Japan, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, New York. Yeah,
Okay.
I went to like a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
Just to shadow people, just to watch people work, and just to hang out with my new friends.
Yeah.
So but that really stepped up my game, or that opened up my eyes to a little bit more well-rounded approach to NKT and how you can use NKT in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because each of the people that I shadowed had a different background. And so there were trainers, there were digestion, like hormone specialists, there was acupuncture, there was massage therapy, there's PT, like all these different ones. And even if they had some of the same backgrounds, they used it in different ways. So I was looking more of their approach to NKT and how they thought, like more of their thought process. And that really helped me to formulate how I could use NKT. Instead of, okay, this is the only way to do it. No, there's other ways that you can actually do it.
Yeah.
So that really helped me out a lot. And then, I was assisting a lot in Taiwan. Obviously, I was always going to be there, and I was always the study group leader, running all that stuff. And then, I guess just one day, David decided he was tired of going to Asia because it's a really far trek. But no, he had me co-teach with him one time, and he was like, "Okay, I think you're good. I think you're ready." And so I just kind of took over Taiwan. And from Taiwan, I'm like, okay, well, what if we expanded to other countries too? So because there's a cultural difference with like I guess the Western culture and the Eastern culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like the bridge in between because I understood both. And with communications, it could get difficult if you don't understand the cultures. So I just kind of took over Asia and was like, okay, David, if you let me, do this, I'll communicate with everybody, I'll set everything up, and I'll make NKT grow in Asia.
Yeah.
So since then, we've grown the market to, Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, and Tomonori does Japan because they're allergic to English over there, and so he does Japan. But I've got the other ones. I've got the Singapore and Hong Kong, Korea.
Okay.
And just basically just trying to grow it as much as I can because I think it's such a great thing and it's such a great tool that anybody can use. That I want more of the world, as much of the world, to have access to it as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious, can you give like a short, like a snapshot view of what your work and your training used to look like before you ever knew NKT compared to how you feel about it now? What are like the little differences that maybe, just like briefly?
All right. So I used to dig my elbows into people.
Uh-huh.
And it was one of those no pain, no gain type of things.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, okay, so that's how I did my massage work, for my sports massage for people.
Yeah.
And training people was a little bit more, I did it two different ways. One was either competition-based or like performance-based, where it was the old competition type thinking of go, 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 120% all the time. Or for the rehab type stuff that I did for training was I had a background in like RKC style kettlebells, a little bit more strict stuff. So at least that was okay. And that, I mean, that one I still had like the 80% rule, so that was cool. But it was, I mean, it was just like a mishmash of just like, hey, let's release stuff and let's just hope that, you know, this training program works for you.
Yeah.
You know, and it was more of like the spray and pray, kind of like my own ghetto version of physical therapy, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of what everybody does until they learn to this kind of stuff. It's like, you know, they release shit and then they activate shit. They hope that it works.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of what I did back then. Thankfully, I know better now.
Mm-hmm. What was maybe the hardest thing that you had to learn in NKT, or maybe just the most difficult concept that was like, wow, I really spent the most time learning this, or this was my biggest hurdle that I had to overcome? I remember for me, it was directional testing when you and Jordan sat over me for like 30 minutes and did like the same thing like over and over and over. And it's like, I still don't get it, Jackie. You know, are there any things like that it was just like, this was the hardest thing, and how did you overcome that?
Well, the hardest thing for me was level one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is NKT? Because, like I mentioned before, like I almost quit because I had no idea what was going on, and I actually learned it while assisting.
Yeah.
And now obviously we have higher standards as far as like who's an assistant and whatnot. But I'm very thankful that back then there wasn't that.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate in that opportunity. But I think the hardest thing that I've learned from NKT, because after that level one thing, and we didn't have directional testing back then, so it was a lot easier. It was like, okay, you TL a B that makes a weakened clear A strong. Okay, cool. We release the B and we activate the A. And this was like, oh, okay. But I mean, you know, that doesn't work all the time now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from that aside, I think the thing that's taken me the most time to grasp with NKT was to not treat everything that you find and to take your time and look a little bit deeper.
Okay.
And so it's more of a slow your roll kind of thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, just because you see something cool doesn't mean that you need to act on it. And just to kind of look a little bit further, just to take a look at a big picture and just kind of just look a little bit more before you do something. So it's one of those like measure twice, cut once kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in this case, measure like 4, 5, 6 times and then cut once.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the hardest thing for me because I have a tendency to do things quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often need to like remind myself to slow down. Like even nowadays, I still have to remind myself to slow down.
Okay. Yeah. That being said, since you've assisted, you've done study groups, you've instructed mini courses, what is the thing that you see students just like not understand or just have the hardest time understanding over and over again? And what would be like your 10-second advice, if you can fit that into short advice, of how they can learn that the best?
There's a few different things that I see with people actually that I see like as a common thing. So I take a lot of time to practice that with them. And one of the things is actually the sensitivity to the neural lock.
Okay.
And I'm just using this one as first because it's the hardest thing. It's the thing that takes the most time and effort to get right.
Yeah.
Because everything else is like a concept. So it's like as long as you get the concept, then you're good. But if you don't have good muscle testing, if you don't have good sensitivity to the neural lock, it's not even necessarily the muscle testing, but this is the sensitivity to the neural lock, then I mean everything else after that just doesn't matter as much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when I teach my classes, I actually spend about like 20 to 30 minutes just having people practice the neural lock, or practice their sensitivity to the neural lock, and I'll have them practice like what it feels like for a neural lock, what it feels like to have it being like a compensation, like so it's too strong, and what it feels like to be a fail. And I'll make the differences very, very subtle. And so I have them practice that a lot, and I make sure that people understand that the neural lock is not a visual thing, it's a feeling. And you have to feel, you have to listen with your testing hand or with your testing arm, because I mean, for any manual therapist will know how to listen with their hands and their fingers and their
Mm-hmm.
body. But for a lot of movers, they don't.
Okay.
And also in Asia, they palpate very, very differently than they do in the States.
Do they?
Oh, absolutely. Like they're more of the jab type.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're jabbers, and that's just how
Yeah.
they palpate. That's just how they're taught,
Okay.
And so the release methods are also kind of jabby. So I spend a lot of time like telling them to slow their roll and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
take a softer approach
Mm-hmm.
and kind of to teach them how to just be a little bit more soft in their touch. And so that's why I spend a lot of time with the neural lock. But then even if somebody is good with listening with their hands, they still need that practice.
Yeah.
So I recommend to everybody to practice feeling for a neural lock and getting picky with their neural lock. Because the more picky you are with it and the more sensitive you are to it, the better your treatment's going to be. Because it'll tell you that, I mean, we all know that when you're looking for something that you're say like, oh, I found a neural lock. Great, let's treat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't give you a neural lock, it just makes it stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find something that does give you a true neural lock, that's what you want to go for. You don't want to just go for stuff that gets things stronger, right? And then even after your treatment, right, you go back and you challenge retest, and you retest and you're like, okay, is it a neural block? Well, no, it's got stronger. Okay, so you finish that treatment, then you look for something else that makes that stronger and stronger until you get that neural lock. So if you neural lock chase, I found that's another way that you can be pretty thorough with your treatment as well.
Okay.
But in order to do that, you have to be have a good sensitivity to that neural lock.
Yeah. All right, Jackie, are there any last kind of recommendations you would give to people, books to read that would help them understand NKT, or maybe even like articles that are on the Facebook page, lost in the archives somewhere, that you would recommend people dig up, or any kind of like other learning resources that really helped you to grasp motor control and NKT and how this stuff works?
Yeah, so utilize as much of the resources as you possibly can. NKT is such a fantastic community because of the resources and the community. So reach out for help when you can, as much as you can, because there will be people that will give you useful advice. And the community itself, as far as like the scholars page, has grown so much and it's evolved so much to the point where, like, I mean, we're not allowed to say, to answer a question with level 2 smiley face, level 3 smiley face. Like we've already eradicated that because of, but there's a lot of very good information on there. But what I recommend is to actually search on there first. Because if you just ask a question and like it's a question that's been asked 800 times in the past.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get people who are the veterans really that are giving you the answers. It's going to be a little bit more of like the newer people, which I mean it'll be good too. But the veterans are going to say, look in the archives. Like just search it under the thing. There's a million different things under there, and you can piece together a ton of really good information. Another thing is all the files and the documents that are on all those Facebook pages. Download those, keep them on your computer as references, go through those, and there's just a lot of really good gems in there. Thomas's pro tips are fantastic.
Yeah.
He's got pro tips in every level, so I would recommend those ones. A lot of Thomas's videos are very good. The extra courses, the specialty courses that we're starting to put out now as NKT. So we've got the advanced muscle palpation or the advanced muscle testing and palpation course that Thomas does, and then the advanced movement repatterning course that Sally and I are doing. I highly recommend those because those will cover a lot of the details that are commonly missed when you first learn NKT. Because when you first learn NKT, you're learning a concept. You're learning a concept through muscle testing. So you're not learning muscle testing, you're learning a concept through muscle testing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget that. And so to have the concept down, but not know the muscle testing and not knowing how to give the treatment, I mean, those are two important parts of it.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend going to both of those extra classes. As far as the books go, if you have not read Anatomy Train by now, smack yourself in the hand because bad.
Yeah.
You should have already read Anatomy Training. You should have it, like all the posters and everything.
Yeah.
Those are really good. There's movement mantra posters. Those ones just came out. Those are brand new. I really like those ones as well. Those are a different system of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really, really good stuff out there to help you kind of understand the body a little bit more. Depends on what your focus is more of, whether it's more manual or whether it is more movement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of like a beginning, I would say. But there's several courses and books to look at if you want to get a little bit more rounded. So what I find is like the more people that I talk to, the more cool courses that I want to find. And I'll do a lot of research on a course before I take it.
Yeah.
And so I'll talk to a lot of people first. But there's a lot of really good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Just gotta talk to some people.
Yeah. All right, Jackie, thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you. Excited to be
for
talking.
having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks so much.
It's been an honor to be the first one. I feel special.
No, the honor and pleasure is all mine, Jackie. Thank you.